Filmmakers like Prashanth, Neel and Anurag Kashyap have been wonderful mentors. Prashanth has been mentor to my son Akhil, and I know when Akhil's faced the ups and downs, like all actors do, Prashanth has been there for him and kind of pulled him out of the depth of despair and given him a lot of courage to go on. And Anurag Kashyap has done the same for Akshat.
Yeah.
So in this spirit of mentoring and giving and helping the younger generation see the future, I would love to invite Prashanth to tell us his story, because everybody sees the success of KGF and they see what you were able to achieve and this glory, but nobody knows about the journey that got you there and the failures that you faced. So, over to you.
Good evening. Firstly, I think it was a terrible idea to slot us after Dr. Ravi Kannan went up there. And you know, the entertainment industry looked very tiny after what you are doing, sir. Congratulations. And also I qualify for all the 5 ingredients that you said we shouldn't be doing for cancer. So I'll try to get better with that. I came to the film industry on a whim and a fancy. I think like most of us do, it's just a lot of glitter till you start realizing that you know, this is very serious. Today if you ask me what goes into making films, I think there's a lot of common sense that goes into it, which you don't have initially, because it seems like an industry which is driven largely on passion, and I think there's more truth to that than just having passion. I think there's a lot of economics involved, and to see films, buy tickets, go see films, looks very, very easy from the outside, but I think knowing how, you know, so it so happened that before I started my first movie, I made a movie called Ugram in 2014, and before I went to shoot, I thought everybody who had made movies before were bad directors and I was just going to change everything. I took a couple of shots and then I just wanted this movie to be watched by 10 people. So the perspective changed as you sunk deeper into this dream, into this haze. And I think more than anything else, I didn't have the right people around me. So getting into the industry without having the right people is like, I mean, filmmaking is not like tennis, where, you know, only one person is there on court and you don't really need anybody. It's like a cricket team. And you have to have all the other 10 players playing well for you to succeed. So I think I learned that very quickly. And yeah, that's about it to begin with.
So I was told that you stalled the film and you taught yourself to edit.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I hadn't worked under anybody. I did not go to a film school, which is not probably that, which is not something that I would preach to anybody. I think I did it the very wrong way, and I learned only from my own mistakes. I tell a lot of kids who want to get into cinema that they should go and work under somebody practically, not because they can learn creativity, but they can learn what not to do. by watching at least 5 other directors doing it, and I learned cinema by making my own mistakes, and I scraped out of it, probably because I'm that good. But I wouldn't suggest that to everybody. I don't usually like to tell those stories because it inspires. Because I sold the only piece of land that I had to make this movie. I did everything wrong in my first movie. So I didn't make money back, but I made a lot of name, which is probably half the things that you want right from making cinema, because your identity is as important as your product is. And I learned how to edit. I learned how to make better cinema with almost every day that I went to this sets, because I did not have practical knowledge of how to be on a set. I did not have leadership skills, which I learned very quickly. I understood that if I was going to make a mistake also, I don't want anybody else telling me that. I had to just believe in myself and make the movie with the greatest conviction that I have. So yeah, I learned a lot of things apart from just editing.
There were some questions that young filmmakers had for both of you, if I may refer to them. How do you cope with the self-doubt? And when things don't work out and you lose courage, how do you cope with that? And what are the guiding steps for young filmmakers on this?
I think we face self-doubt every day, especially when you're working on a project. So my go-to strategy for avoiding self-doubt, probably not the best thing to do, but is to ignore it. When you ignore your self-doubt and you just go back to the process, and I think you go back to the discipline of doing that same thing again and again and trying to get a different result or a better result, whether it's when you're writing a script or whether it's when you're shooting. You don't have that much freedom, but then when you're prepping for it, you can probably apply that. So yes, I mean, we all go through self-doubt every single day, every single hour. There are days when you're just staring at the blank piece of paper and you're doubting every single word that you've written, and you are pressing that command A and deleting all of that. So yes, I think the one thing that we do when self-doubt comes is to accept that it's going to linger on, no matter what you do, no matter how big or how small you are in that process, where you are in that journey. I think self-doubt is going to creep up no matter what. So as long as you know that it exists, and as long as you know that you can ignore it, and not just ignore it, but follow it up with the discipline of doing the process, engaging yourself in the way things need to be done and not romanticize your situation with the self-doubt, I think you can make the next step. So that's how I tackle it.
There's a lot of disparity between what we write to what we execute, because it needs about 500 people to make the movie, but only one person to sit and write it. And I go back to my first movie where I thought I was going to be making the best movie in the world. And everything started changing, shot by shot started changing. Finally, when the movie was out, I thought it was about 15% of what I'd written. So this is something that every director has to get used to. Every person who's executing a movie has to get used to the fact that he's not going to be making the exact movie that he saw in his head. So all the self-doubt that I had in my first movie helped me cope with the other 3 movies that I've made. Because I thought I had made the most terrible movie after I made it. And I remember I was standing under the shower several times wondering how I'm going to kill myself after the movie released. So, but when the movie came out, I realized that I had seen the movie so many times, that I have lost judgment of this movie, and probably the memory of getting the result of that first movie, it went the right way, of course. The result of that movie went the right way for me. Knowing that I did the right things, even when I had doubt, in my first movie helped me to make my other 3 movies without having enough doubt.
And I think it never leaves you. So even when you go back and you revisit a work, they stand out for you.
Thank you for that. In film education, you have the craft, the skills, the business sense, understanding audiences. You have a lot of culture, sensibility. There are discussions, watching films with the filmmakers and things. But the industry hires with the confidence and the grit, which is not taught in film school. And it's just a comfort zone, you know. Film school is just a comfort zone because everybody's rooting for you, everybody wants you to do well, but the real world is so different. It needs a different kind of resilience, grit and courage to face the trolls, to face the competition, to face the critics. I remember when Shiva was releasing, Shiva, the film that Nagarjuna, my husband, had acted in and produced, Annapurna Studios had produced Ram Gopal Verma's first film. And many of the producers and distributors of the time had seen it and said, Babu, ఒక్క రోజు ఆడతాయి ఆడుతుంది, it'll run maybe for one day. Just think that whatever money you've lost, you'll lose. But the film went on to, there's a cinema before Shiva, Telugu cinema before Shiva and Telugu cinema after Shiva. So, but at that moment, the courage and the grit that you have to have and to be able to do what you believe and what you think you are doing justice to, it takes a different kind of courage. What would you say would build that grit and courage? I see you when Akhil has a failure and I know the curtains are drawn, there's darkness, I don't see him for maybe a week. And then I'll see he's getting his car ready and he's putting stuff into his car, and I know, okay, he's going on a road trip to see Prashanth. And I know he'll come back ready to face the world. So what is it that we can do for all young people to get that grit and that courage back to remember that you can do it and go out and do it again?
I think it's a practical experience, which I mentioned before, that you have to be on sets. You have to have seen somebody else's success. You have to have seen somebody's failure, and I think that's the greatest gift that can be given to a student, especially in cinema, that he gets to be on sets where he knows the entire process of a cinema and finally sees the result of it. It's like somebody else is a lab rat for him, and he should be doing it time and time again till he understands that cinema is done in a certain way. And the next part of your question is, I think you need to fail to realize and to cope. Failure is the only way that can harden you up. And you're absolutely right, a film school can't teach you, because in a film school you're just aiming at a bullseye target. When you're in cinema, there is somebody else standing on the other side also pointing a gun at you. So it has to go through that. You have made enough sample sizes in your life for you to have understood about life also and cinema also. And I think it happens with every profession, that failure is the only way that you can understand it thoroughly. There's not a million words that can be written for somebody to understand it. You have to go through it once.
Yeah, I think it happens when your naivety and your ignorance is challenged. I remember when I was in school, in the film school, I got a scholarship. I went out to make a spoof film. I directed a couple of plays. So while leaving Hyderabad, I was on the seventh cloud, and I felt that okay, Mumbai is gonna welcome me with an open arm. Right? But when I reached there, I was literally dragged out of 3 studios. And Mumbai is a city that it strips you naked first, and then makes sure that you sort of build from the scratch. So when that stripping down of confidence happened for me, and when it grew again, I think that is where my grit developed, where I realized that, the question comes to you, do you really want to do this? Do you really want to go through all of this just so something that you have fantasized or imagined about is out there in 3D or 2D? Right? So you question yourself on that. And if you can answer that question, that yes, that is what I want, I think you will develop. So I don't think any school, not just a film school, I don't think any school can effectively teach how to develop that resilience, because that resilience is going to come from people who don't love you, who don't care about you, who are indifferent to you. And it's going to grow there. And a film school is a place where, for a lack of a better word, everyone will care about you. They will care where you're going, how you're growing. So there's an inherent discrepancy between the environment that's needed to grow that. So I think it's going to happen when, as I said, when you fail.
Thank you. I have a question for Akshat. He made a film called Hatti. That was his last film. And it was on the transgender community, and Nawazuddin was the actor, did a mighty fine job. I do understand that you had a very extensive, detailed process. I had never been exposed to this community until I went for Akshat's wedding to his hometown. And you hear, you see, but this was something else. The wedding got over. It was barely over. His father chanted beautifully, sang so beautifully to bless him and his bride, beautiful bride. And suddenly, it was like 2 a.m. or something, we were dozing, and suddenly I looked up and there were this huge group of men, masculine men, dressed as women. And it was a world that I had never seen before. Tell us about your process.
I'll just correct a bit. They were actually Kinnar community, who just don't have enough resources for the physical makeover.
Right, no, but I didn't mean anything disrespectful, right? Nothing, but it was something completely new. So, and you obviously, with your hometown, this is part of the culture, so it was a subject that was dear to your heart. Please, just tell us about your process.
So coincidentally, there's a line in the film which was shot before and written before, which was actually told by one of the people standing there, where he says कि हम बधाई लेते हैं भीख नहीं. Right? So they are very passionate, and to be very honest, this is something even I used to think that we as a society don't respect them, which is partly true. But Kinnar community in our country has existed since ancient ages. They are mentioned in Ramayana. They are probably mentioned in Mahabharata. They are characters who are transgender. So they have existed, and we have sort of lived with them through and through. So as I was discussing with you earlier, that the initial sort of a want was to look at this community from a perspective that is not sympathetic or pitiful to them. Which was the reason I sort of chose my protagonist to be a slightly grey character, where he takes a wrong path to do the right thing. Right? And to write this thing was one journey in itself, because I met people from our industry who have not come out yet. I met my friends who have not come out yet. They helped me understand the difference between different words and why one word is not correct for the other person. Right? So all those differences were understood. I was almost robbed when I went to speak to a pickup boy in Mumbai. They stand there at night. They have their areas they have designated to themselves, and I was almost robbed when I ran away on my bike. So I went through all of that, and I was able to speak to different members of Kindle community who didn't want to be named, who didn't want to give their real name, not just because we as a bi-gender society don't respect them much or sort of look down upon them. Even internally, even in their community, they safeguard themselves so much that they're hesitant in mingling with you. I think I did justice, at least in the writing part, at least in the part where we show the gharana, because that was the most beautiful process for me to not just write that, but to shoot it, edit it, and then present it how it is presented in the film. By the way, my editor of film Haddi is also an Annapurna alumni, Tanya Chhabria. So shout out to her. She just edited Black Warrant. Great editor. So we had a blast of a time understanding. Like I was telling you, so we know that when someone dies, we follow this process of Tervi and Chalisa, right? They follow the same thing when they undergo a surgery or a castration. They allow blood to flow out for 40 days. They have hundreds of rituals, some of them very spiritual in the nature, but very crude in its applicability and almost torturous, right? So they go through all this pain to physically adapt to a new body. And at the end of the 40th day, you have a ceremony, a huge puja ceremony. So for 40 days, you're not allowed to look at your reflection. There are no mirrors in the house. All the glass windows are covered up. You eat basic food that a patient does, like a very sattvic food. You're not allowed to see a male figure, let alone talk or converse with them. You're not allowed to see them. And after all of this, for 40 days, in this big puja setup, you have a veil. The first thing that you do is look up, put your veil up and look at Bahuchara Mata, their goddess. Then you're supposed to look at the Guru, the first person who is sort of in a way of speaking, granting you this life. And then you take your veil up, and for the first time after 40 days, when you've given yourself time that you have not seen yourself for 40 days, you open up your veil and you look at yourself in the new avatar. So this entire process was eye-opening. And the only thing that they have asked, and by the way, they're fun. All of them, you sit down. I remember on the set, we were having a hard time with a dada putting up a light and it was really hot, right? And these people were sort of, in a very fun way, mocking us. इतने में हो गया तुम्हारा, अरे हम तो ये करते हैं, and they know it's valid. They have gone through that pain. So there's so much fun to be with their life. The only thing that they have been asking for is to cohabit respectfully. So
Lovely.
That experience itself was like, it changed me from inside how I looked at people. Just that.
Thank you for sharing that. Did you go home? Yeah.
Thank you.
Did you go home and did you meet the community? Did they respond?
They live region-wise. By the way,
True, but did those friends who had come at the end of your wedding to bless you?
I
No?
couldn't. I couldn't.
Okay.
Only
I would
because
love
I
to
couldn't
hear-
go back home itself.
Right, I would love to hear what they had to say.
By the way, they
Because
also
they came to
have
bless
a lot
his
of,
wedding. Yeah.
They also have a lot of conflict and drama
Yeah.
within their own community also.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like us.
Yeah.
Politics. Yeah.
Can imagine. Okay. I have a question for you, Prashanth. So, your Salar fans want to know that they believe that you cracked the magic combination for Salar and KGF. There's a magic combination of being able to tell something that has immense mass appeal, yet has certain authenticity that every member of the audience connects deeply to. Of course, I'm not going to pretend I can decipher Prashanth, Neel, but I've heard these young people talk. So what is it to film students that you can say to encourage artistic integrity and yet get the business right? I think that's the quest for everyone, and that's where they fail the most. Either they get carried away like Akshat and go into deep artistic expression, or they get carried away by the business and forget their storytelling integrity. So, some words of experience from you.
Yes, madam. So I made 4 movies till now. They're mass commercial movies, and they are not the movies that I usually sit and watch on television. So my taste is very different. If given a choice, I would make very different kind of movies. I'd make something like an Inception. I'd make a love story, like Hum Aapke Kaun. But the viability, the feasibility, the business, they all lie somewhere else. Coming from South India, I know where the money comes from. I'm not somebody who has come over here to make a difference. I've come here to make a livelihood, bread and butter, of course, a lot of butter with my bread, and so I understand where I am right now, and I try and make movies with only one intent, and I think they teach this in many schools, business schools, consumer behavior. And I understand that pattern, and even if I'm not comfortable, that's where I said passion goes out of the window. I might not be comfortable making these movies. I probably want to make movies that I want to make, but I'll not do it right now. Because when it is only about economics for me. It's the creativity comes from basic necessities for me. I have to make a certain kind of movie. I have to make a movie for Prabhas. I have to make a movie for Yash. I have to make a movie for NTR. When I am making these movies for NTR or Prabhas or Yash, I can't make a Hum Aapke Kaun. They'll throw stones at me for that. I have to make a movie in a certain way, but I have to make it, I try to bring in my own little bits in it that I sprinkle right at the end. Maybe it's just a mother's emotion, or it's a friend's emotion or something like that I bring into that. I don't, I'm not lost in the whole space of trying to be creatively perfect, as long as I know that I'm entertaining my audience. It's only about economics for me when I make cinema. So someday when I make my kind of movie and it fails, I have to be completely okay with that before I even start it. And right now I'm not in that phase.
Do you think that day will come?
Definitely, very, very soon.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, for KGF 1, did you write it first, or was it like more of a story given to you and then you fleshed out a screenplay and then directed the film?
No, I wrote it.
So when you, because I love the world that you create, it's sort of, and I think that's why for all, you're being really humble right now, but then the selling point of why KGF and Salah were loved was because the world that you created sucked us in. And we stayed there to watch the story, right? So when you were writing KGF, did you write the sort of grandeur of the world that you had, or the grit of the world that you have in the script? And how did you sort of convince the producer that it's going to be as grand as I imagine? imagining, and then you need to make sure that there's a budget enough for this one. How did you convince it?
When I gave the narration of KGF to Amala Films and Yash, I don't think that's one more story that I need to be telling, because that's not the right way to do it.
Those are the stories that
you know that somebody has made Ugram, but he's going to be making KGF, and it's of a very, very big scale, and you just have to trust this guy to make it. It could have gone both ways. It went the right way for us. So I think that little bit of madness is. I believe that cinema industry has equal amounts of common sense and madness, and sometimes one of them take over, and it might give you the bad result or the good result. But there's that much. There's 50% of madness that I can count right now. So it went right for us.
Okay, thank you.
So just to wrap up, I know this is extremely interesting for us to go on, and we have a time and we have an audience. So just to wrap up, I thought I have something useful here. You both as filmmakers and film education on my side. And there was this book, The Art of Impossible, that I've kind of taken this from, by Stephen Kotler, who's a journalist who also writes and books, and he was a extreme sport journalist, and he talks about the art of impossible, which I thought runs a very close parallel to filmmaking. The art of impossible, really, you take an idea and then it's just impossible the way you put it together and tell that story, and then millions and millions and millions of people want to watch it over and over and over again. And he talks about immediate feedback as a great strength for extreme sports, right? Immediate feedback, that having your wits about you to have the immediate feedback. And then in the context of writers, the four things about their work and their audience responses, that if it is boring and repetitive, you've lost your audience, right? That's when you fail. If it's confusing, they miss the plot. That's when they fail. If it's arrogant, you've mistaken that they are stupid. You've lost this, right? And then finally, yes, and not just you've lost your audience, but you've lost their forgiveness, because an audience can be extremely forgiving to a filmmaker's mistakes if a filmmaker is vulnerable and honest, right? And if it's too uncomfortable where you take them, you've disturbed them and you've lost them. So I found this was, would you like to resonate on this? About...
I think everything that you said was right there.
It resonates, right? All of it. Yes. And for you, Akshat?
I agree with that.
Yeah, these are great words. I'll share this passage with you, by the way. And I'm looking forward to having you at film school and talking to the students, and I'm sure you would get energized, and they would be energized too. I don't know if we have time for questions from the audience, but I could ask 2 questions.
Sir, this question is, I'm Ramlingesh KV, founder of Neel. This question for you, Mr. Prashanth sir. While before making the movie, when the story in the script level, that is the vision of the director. He prepares everything script level. In your vision, who you think as a hero? Is it yourself or any other person?
So it's not as innocent as just writing a story for us. The moment we start writing characters, we say, okay, Amitabh Bachchan is going to be playing this character. the hero of this movie is going to be Prabhas, and the heroine is going to be played by Deepika Padukone. I'm talking about Kalki. I don't know why I mentioned all of those names, but I'm just giving you an example. So it would have been fantastic for us not to have somebody in mind when we were writing, and we could even sketch it out. But it happens that it is probably the most polluted way of making of telling stories. It's not as beautiful as we think it is from the outside. It is commercial. You go pay money, pick up popcorn, and I don't know why I'm belittling the film industry also right now, but it is very simple. We make film for the screen. It is an audio visual experience. So we do everything possible to enhance that only through audio and video. So the way we think is very different. I wish we could just make a pure story and say it the way that story is, because our stories are more beautiful than they appear on screen.
Hi. So actually, this is in the relation of what you were also talking about. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see.
Okay. So you talked about consumer preference and economics game, and this is one of the phrase which has also been going around is that do we live in a consumer-driven economy or do we live in a production-driven economy, right? And in terms of even in media, what kind of films are being produced? Does that affect what kind of films that are being consumed? That's first layer, and then also. Because the producers do have that ability and responsibility, does that also lead into, like whatever ethical and moral fabric of the society that we are driving in terms of younger generation, right? Can you please talk about that?
So, the first part of the question, what was the first part of the question?
So it's not widely accepted one, but it's like the commonly accepted in economics is we are living in consumer-driven economy. But at the same time, if one actually looks at the world, we also live in production-driven economy, right? In a way.
So there was a lot of criticism for the Hindi film industry for a long time, that they were being a production-driven economy. Industry, and that's when the South movies started giving the audiences what they really wanted, and that is where they latched onto. And I think anywhere in the world it is always consumer-driven economy. I don't think we're in a dictatorial world where we decide that this is what we want to give you, and the audiences will take it. They will go elsewhere, or they will not go to the theater. It's not just because it's a Sunday that you are going to find yourself going and sitting in the theater. So it's always going to be a consumer-driven industry, especially when it comes to the film industry. If we don't realize it today, then tomorrow morning we'll wake up and we'll know what to exactly give back to the audience. And when it comes to morality, I don't think I learned anything from cinema. Not just me, my generation. I never learned anything from Dr. Rajkumar's time also. That I am supposed to behave in a certain way with the society. If your father and mother don't teach you, I don't think even your teachers can teach you. And that's the plain and simple truth about it. I don't hold myself morally responsible for anybody when they come to cinema. It is not that I want to make cinema irresponsibly. I do have violence, but every bit of that violence is something that I try to justify in cinema, not for the sake of morality, but for the sake of people being entertained. And this is just an entertainment industry. We came last after everybody spoke, so I think that answered it.
Having said all of that, I think the background on which KGF was made, the background of the suffering and the poverty and the mining and the injustice. I think the reality was very loud and clear of why somebody like that evolved and why he was revered and why his struggle was so important. So,
So
don't
I'll
take
just,
it.
I'll just add one thing. I made a movie called Salar recently, and I was with the censor officer, and she said there is so much of violence in the movie. You know, you're showing Prabhas cutting off hands and legs, and I said, Madam, he's cutting off the hands and legs of people who were trying to rape a girl. Isn't that the best piece of moral science that anybody can learn, that you're not supposed to allow a girl to be harmed in this society? And she said, that's bullshit. And that is, I mean, that's everybody's opinion. I don't think I'm making the right kind of movies. I don't know if I'm going to allow my own children to watch it. But it is certified A, sir. It is certified A.
I think it reminds me of what I might not be quoting him exactly, but I think what Quentin Tarantino said in one of the interviews, that a movie is what, 2 hours? That's like 8% of your time in a day. And if you're watching, like, let's say 2 films in a week, it's accounting to 3% or less than 3% of your time in a week, right? So if that is making you do something wrong, then there's something inherently wrong with you.
Well, I did warn you that the audience are not going to be the fans you're used to seeing. They're going to be a very different audience, a very evolved audience, a very responsible audience. Thank you so much for being such a patient and encouraging audience. It has taken a lot of courage and a lot of effort to make this happen, and I want to thank Harish for not giving up on us and giving us this opportunity. But this is one of the first conversations about failure that I have been part of in film industry. Nobody likes to talk about it. Everybody's hurting too much, and everybody's in their own struggle. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Prashanth. Thank you.